Today, we're diving into how a crisis in Venezuela could sever the lifeline for its closest ally, Cuba, and what happens when that line is finally cut. Okay, so it all kicks off with this absolutely stunning news. Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro has been captured in a dramatic overnight operation. And almost immediately, the world's attention pivots like 1,400 miles north to an island nation that just lost its main benefactor. For Cuba, the ground has literally just crumbled beneath its feet. And look, the geopolitical stakes became crystal clear fast. Right after the news broke, senior U.S. officials made this incredibly bold prediction, basically saying that Maduro's fall would directly lead to the collapse of the Cuban government. I mean, what a stunningly direct statement of cause and effect. So you might be asking, why would an event in Venezuela trigger such a powerful prediction about Cuba? Well, to get that, we need to look at the very foundation of their alliance, a lifeline that is built almost entirely on barrels of oil. The deal itself, it's actually pretty simple. Ever since Hugo Chavez came to power way back in 1999, Venezuela has been sending Cuba cheap, subsidized oil. And in return, Cuba sends thousands of doctors, nurses, military advisors, and security people to Venezuela. It's a classic barter system, really, but it's one that has become the absolute bedrock of Cuba's day-to-day survival. And let me be clear, we are not talking about a trickle of oil here. On average, Venezuela sends Cuba up to 35,000 barrels of oil every single day. That's like 3 or 4 massive tankers arriving every month. It's a constant flow of energy that literally keeps the lights on for the entire island. This right here, this visual, really puts that dependency into perspective. According to energy experts, that Venezuelan supply accounts for a staggering 50% of the oil Cuba needs to import. Just think about that for a second. Half of the island's entire energy shortfall is covered by this one single partner who is now, well, out of the picture. And the consequences if that supply gets cut, well, they're dire. Pavel Vidal, who used to be an economist for Cuba's own central bank, he puts it bluntly. For an economy that's already been stuck in a recession for 6 years, losing this oil isn't just another problem. It's a potential catastrophe. Okay, so we've set the stage with the high-level economics, but what does all this vulnerability actually look and feel like for the average person living in Cuba today? Let's take a look at the crisis on the ground. First, you gotta understand, this thing with Venezuela isn't happening in a vacuum. Cubans are already dealing with years of severe shortages of the absolute basics. We're talking food, medicine, fuel. The economy has been described by its own president as partially paralyzed, and tourism, which used to be a key source of cash, is way down. And maybe the most visible, most frustrating sign of this crisis, the blackouts. For years, the capital, Havana, was mostly protected from the worst of the power cuts. Well, not anymore. As you can see, even Havana now gets daily blackouts of 10 hours or more, and in other parts of the country, it can be up to 20 hours a day without power. This quote from a butcher in Cuba, man, it just captures the mood on the street perfectly. It's this sense of just bracing for impact, a feeling of total exhaustion and pessimism about a really tough situation that everyone knows is about to get so much worse. Now, for a lot of Cubans, this looming collapse feels, well, eerily familiar. It brings back memories of the huge crisis in the 1990s after the Soviet Union fell apart. But the crucial question is, can Cuba actually survive this time the way it did back then? So let's put the two crises side by side. In the 90s, after the Soviets were gone, Cuba was kind of saved by a new tourism boom and a flood of foreign investment. But today, those lifelines just aren't there. As economist Pavel Vidal points out, potential allies like China and Vietnam don't really trust Cuba's state-run economy, and frankly, its current leaders just don't command the same respect that they did 30 years ago. So you're facing economic disaster and some really grim historical parallels? How did Cuba's government officially respond to the capture of its key ally? Well, they came out swinging. President Miguel Díaz-Canel gives this fiery speech condemning the U.S. actions and calling it an imperialist grab for Venezuelan oil. And then he makes this incredibly high-stakes declaration, pledging Cuba's very lifeblood to the cause. And you know, this wasn't just talk. There was a real human cost here. The government quickly announced that 32 of its military and security personnel were killed during the operation in Venezuela. They even published their names, ranks, and photos in the state-run media to really hammer home the sacrifice. But, you know, behind that official defiant line, you start to hear some more measured voices. A former Cuban diplomat, Carlos Alzagare, basically suggests a more cautious wait-and-see approach. He's pushing back on the idea that a collapse is a sure thing and hinting that Cuba needs to be talking intensely with its other allies, Russia and China. So, when you put it all together, the economic dependency, the crisis on the ground, the geopolitical posturing, it really places Cuba at maybe its most fragile moment in decades. I mean, think about it. It's really a perfect storm. Its number one economic lifeline has been completely severed. At the same time, the U.S. is dialing up the pressure. Meanwhile, other potential allies are skeptical of its economic policies. And this is all happening while its own economy is already on its knees. And all of that leaves us with this one huge, unavoidable question. Unlike in the 1990s, the old escape hatches seem to be closed. With its main patron gone and other powerful friends keeping their distance, can Cuba possibly survive another perfect storm? The path forward has never been more uncertain.